Three, two. Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. I love talking to authors because they have the courage to take their thoughts, their stories, their lessons, put it down a book, and share it with the many, ultimately changing their legacy and destiny in the process. And if you're an entrepreneur out there, I highly recommend you write a book. It will give you clarity, self-awareness, and many opportunities. It's amazing. Podcast interviews, speaking gigs, clients, you name it. And if you need help with any of that, check out dreamstarterspublishing.com. But let's say you have a book that's already done and you want to use the book as a lead magnet, check out bookmarketingcrm.com. Now, as you know, on this podcast, we talk a lot about financial literacy, the mindset it takes to create wealth. And that's why this next book is perfect. It is called Poor by Choice, question mark, and overcome the lies and create a new financial truth. The moment I read this title, I thought of Rich Dad Poor Dad, the book that set me free in life. So that's why I'm excited to talk with the author, Estelle Gibson, on this podcast episode. Estelle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Well, let's start off with the genesis of this book. I love the direction of it. I love waking people up. It reminds me of Plato's allegory of the cave. Once you break free, it's your moral obligation to set other people free. So, what made you want to write this book? And if you can give us a quick little background on where you come from and what got you here, that'd be phenomenal.
Sure. Okay, so first of all, I didn't want to write a book. So let's start there.
Wow. Clients and future clients, don't listen to her then. Don't
No,
listen.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
keep listening. So I am a speaker. So I wanted to create, I'm a speaker and I'm a coach, and I wanted to create a workbook so that
Got it.
I could have a workbook to hand out or to sell or in the whatever, all of that. And I was in a group that had author speakers and coaches. I'm a coach too. So the the author coach said, "Why aren't you writing a book?" And I'm like, "I just want a workbook." And he's like, "You will solidify your information. You will be so confident. You got to go on the journey of writing the book." So after a few years, I decided to go home and write the book, which took forever because I'm a speaker that writes. So that's the first thing, is that I never really planned on it. But, my journey, Mike, started, if you see my TED Talk, my journey started when I was a child and my father was teaching me things about money. But the catalyst for where I'm at today was my divorce. And so after 5 years of marriage, my husband came home one day and out of the blue said, "I want a divorce." And like that,
Wow.
everything changed in my life. Um, so I wasn't prepared for that. Now I'm 5, 6, 7 years into my career. I was probably almost 10 years into my career by then, by the time he asked for the divorce. And I was an auditor for an international accounting firm. I was in finance management positions, but I reverted back to what I learned growing up, and I um, gave up my financial power because I grew up learning that one person manages the money, which was my dad. And so when I got married and I was dealing with people's money all day long, and my husband was good at managing the money, I was happy to hand that over. And this happens a lot for many people in different arenas, whether it's with a partner and a spouse or a partner, whether it's celebrities handing over, their power to financial managers. In business, I have talked with business owners that, like, I don't want to know the numbers. Okay. You need to know the numbers, right?
Right.
To make decisions. So I handed over my financial power and I had to rebuild my life financially and emotionally because I was going through a divorce. So that's how I started on the path to doing this work. The moment it happened, I was sitting in my attorney's office and she had a table with a bunch of business cards, and she was so helpful to me. And I was seeing how she was helping so many people. I just had the thought, fleeting thought, I wonder if other people need help with managing their money now that they're going through some kind of transition. And that's kind of where it started. And then as I got more involved in self-development communities, and I kept seeing people in self-development, my church community were struggling so much with money, and people in the financial world that had a lot of money were struggling to keep it, to worry about it, to protect it. And I saw that both communities did not have financial freedom.
Mm.
And that's when I decided to create all this stuff that everything's come out of that.
Man, such a ground zero moment. Basically, you rebuilt yourself, and then you realize that uh, what you learned in that journey could be so valuable to those around you. You see it so obviously, right? That's what it is. And so, what is it about the average person? I mean, I think that we learn about money from our, obviously, our family, but also through the school system. Hey, you know what? We're going to teach you about X, Y, and Z, but not about taxes and not about wealth creation.
Oh
And so,
no.
whenever you get that job, you'll just kind of figure it out. But they give the kids a credit card, they get them in the debt for school, and they're
Ugh.
off on the wrong foot right out of the gate. But also, you know, I was told by my dad, and my dad was a workaholic. He was such a mixer fix it guy. He didn't know how to create wealth. So he was just saying, well, you just save your money, right? And then I get around millionaires and billionaires, and that's not how you make wealth, right? That's
Right.
not how you create it. So I learned by being around people in the business atmosphere what to do with
That's
it.
right.
So I think I picked up a lot of potentially good habits when it comes to saving, but bad habits of you will have to save your way to a million rather than create it. So,
Right.
what is it about the average person that you've noticed,
Okay.
when it comes to maybe picking up the bad habits?
So here's the thing. We don't talk about money and we don't teach about money. And what they do in the school is not really practical application. So we adopt what we see in our environments.
Yep.
And the environments are at four levels, Mike. The level of the society that we live in. We live here in the United States. What we believe about money, credit, bankruptcy is very different from a third world country or other countries. That so just because of where you live, the society that you live in, and the generation that you're born into, because if you know anybody from World War II, completely different attitude and behavior around money than somebody that's a millennial or a Gen Z or a Gen
Oh,
X,
yeah.
right? And that's because of the experiences that they had. So that's the society level. Then there's the community level. You're talking about the business community that you were involved in. There's church communities, sports communities, types of jobs, doctors versus, lawyers versus teachers. There is a belief system and a language that people talk about at the community level. And then there's the family, there's four levels. Then the family level. So what you talked about, what you saw, and it's usually what is seen, not what is said. What is seen, not what is said in your family, because you're not talking about it, but you are observing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you adopt what you see in your family. Most families have a motto. We have to work hard for money. You can only save. You can't, don't trust the stock market. Don't work for the man. Don't work for yourself. You know what I mean? There's just all these family mottos. And then the personal level, whether you've had a business, lost a business, been divorced, gone through a bankruptcy, all of those levels create the habits, beliefs, and behaviors that you have around money. And they're not even conscious. You know what I mean? It's like you just come into, like you said earlier, you're kind of just falling into these things. And then we're susceptible to, the credit card companies love marketing to college students now. And,
Yep.
you know, and the younger population. So you're subjected to what's being marketed to you. And if you don't know, you will fall into the patterns of your past history and your family.
So once again, I think what you touched on is people weren't talking about it, right? They always say when you're around your family, don't talk about religion, politics, or money. Well,
Money, right?
if you really want to break it down, isn't it? That's all the three things that really matter. I
Right?
mean, all right, how do you see the world? Also, what do you really
Right.
believe, and what are you doing with your money? Because I realize that, money creates options. Options create freedom, right? And so if
Absolutely.
you're not talking about money and if you're not working towards it and you're not focusing on it, and then you look at someone who is, I think society, whether it's the school system or the media or certain individuals that have an agenda, they demonize people with money. Wait a second. All they did was they looked at money, they talked about money, they focused on building it, and now you're trying to demonize the people who actually do that. So, school system I think is extremely responsible for it, but
Yeah.
uh I guess maybe is there a quick fix? Is there anything that we could do whenever it comes to obviously getting the right books in their hands? But do you think that society has to change in some direction of saying, hey, wealth is good. Capitalism's amazing, right? You instill that into somebody, all of a sudden they remove the limitations. So that's what I would think is think like an entrepreneur, but also have the school system share that message to them.
I think it starts with a conversation, and it can be the school system, but it can be, within your family too. Um, and then we have to define, Mike, what financial freedom means, because it means different things to different people. For some
Good
people,
point.
it's wealth, and that's great. So we've got to be able to allow people to define it for themselves and be okay with that, instead of demonizing them because of some belief that we don't even have ourselves, that we adopted from the society or the family or the church culture or whatever it is. So we got to get honest, and we've got to be able to have those conversations. Um, and when you're talking about freedom, that's the poor by choice. The antithesis of that is the power to choose, because the power to choose gives you the freedom to achieve whatever you want in your life. But people have to define what wealth and what financial freedom means to them, because it's
Mm,
different for everybody. Sometimes it's time freedom, right? For some people, it's more money that they don't have to worry about. For some people, it's to give back. So I just think all of these belief systems are adopted. They come from a place that people don't understand. And because we're not talking about it, then it just gets even worse. Now, the school system could really make a difference, but my son took 2 semesters of financial literacy. And let me tell you, he didn't learn anything.
yeah.
He came home and I was like, "What'd you learn today?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, what are they doing?" Because they're talking about things that are not relevant. He's a freshman in high school. What are you telling him? He's like, "We learned about FICA." I'm like, "How are you going to apply that?" He's like, "I have no idea. I don't have a job." So they're talking about things that aren't relevant. Now, I have gone in to some, creative arts schools. I've been invited in to talk to the kids about money, and we have a real conversation. What's the conversation you're having in your house? If you're not having it, what are you observing? If you had $500, what would you spend it on? We're not talking about the stock market, because they don't want to. What? At 10th grade, they're going to talk about the stock market? No, let's talk about the stock market in light of what you care about. Is it gaming?
Yeah.
Is it, whatever it is? And how can creating assets and income and wealth help you? You know what I mean? So having a real conversation at the level that they can relate to is not happening.
Mm. Yeah, maybe, I do bash on the school system quite a bit, but I will tell you that I really didn't put a lot of energy into it. And it's probably because I didn't see how what I was learning was going to benefit my life. And if
Right.
I was given books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich in school,
Oh
I could
gosh.
probably see how it could make me a little bit stronger, a little bit more articulate, a little bit more courageous, a little bit more successful financially. And I think maybe I just wasn't interested in the content they were sharing, but also they did a poor job of even in college. I didn't want to go to college, but my boss was like, hey, go to college. You could always have a degree to fall back on no matter what you do. And I remember them talking about widgets and showing us like, profit and loss statements, balance sheets, and expense reports, and using the word widget. And I'm like, I don't even know what a widget is. How can I get
Right.
excited about this if it's not my business?
Right.
So I think that maybe I just wasn't into it like your son because I don't see how it benefits me. And maybe they can do a much better job of showing that, hey, you know what? This is fifth grade. Go out there. Let's start a business, a lemonade stand. I want to show you how
Right.
you can actually produce something that makes money. And then the more you work, the more creative, the more resourceful, you could actually have a better lifestyle. You have more freedom. You could have a better
Exactly.
bicycle, right? That's the way I look at it.
And talking to, I work with people, the first thing we talk about is, what is your big dream? Because people have to have a why, Mike.
Bingo. I
Right?
think that's what's my destination. Is that part of chapter 7 or is that something else?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. What's my destination? What's your big dream? What's your why? Because as an entrepreneur, things get tough, things get hard. You're working. I had an HVAC guy come in this week to do some work on my house, and he's like, "Oh, being an entrepreneur, I'm working 80 hours a week so I can avoid working 40 hours a week for somebody else."
Isn't that the
Right?
truth?
Yes, but it's the passion behind it, the why behind it, the reason you're doing it. And, when we were kids, they used to ask us, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'm not even sure they even ask that anymore. But ask it in a way that kids can dream, and that they can begin to look at their gifts and talents. Those things can be identified early, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about a curriculum in a school to get people through, regardless of gifts, talents, learning style. Learning style is a big one. I work with my clients on learning style, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic, read, write. And what we find is that people think that they've had a learning disability, and it's really, they were taught a learning style that doesn't match theirs. Something that simple, Mike.
Wow. Great
Right?
point. Great
Right?
point. I think I learn through listening more than
You're
anything, or
probably auditory.
auditory, but also I have to hear it multiple times. So it's
Right.
one of those things like audiobooks, and podcasts and videos that I just listen to rather than watch.
Yes.
They sink in, and that's a quote that I can regurgitate on stage or on a podcast. So yes, great point
And
there.
how many school classrooms are repeating things over and over and over and over so kids that are auditory can get it, right?
And it's a
So,
recording. And so it's not that you're sitting there in a classroom. It's whenever you're out in the woods or on a
yes.
run, right? It's when
Right,
you could
right,
truly
right.
focus. Maybe that was it. It was like, get me out of the classroom. I'm way better.
Right. So, we got to look at learning style. We've got to look at gifts and talents. We got to look at the big why, the big dream. And I have talked with so many entrepreneurs that said college gave them nothing to help them with their business. Their education was not geared towards being a business owner.
Hmm.
So, if you've got that mindset, which is unique and which is powerful, I believe entrepreneurs make the world, small business owners and entrepreneurs. If that is, your bent, then college may not help you
Yeah.
unless it's an entrepreneur program. But let me tell you, I know friends that have gone into the entrepreneur program, and it's all about, like, I don't know, it's all about funding and,
Right.
stakeholders and
You nailed it. Every time that I've ever seen a college course, it's about, oh, step one is go get funding, right?
angel
Go
funding
go to
and
the Small Business Administration to get approved for a
right.
loan. Give me a break. The real entrepreneurs, they're going to bootstrap in the beginning, and then once it's a
Exactly.
proven model, then you go get funding, right? So I,
Exactly.
and maybe this is something you preach to people, but entrepreneurship is, I don't know, can you learn it just through a book or even through auditory? You learn by doing, right? And I think the sooner you get started, you get that thicker skin, right? You start to figure out where you're weak and where you're strong at. You start to notice things about yourself, the self-awareness, the self-actualization of what you really want, what you want to do for the rest of your life. So getting started early is such a benefit. And I think what that is a blessing of what's happening in today's society. A lot of kids are seeing entrepreneurship as their career path. And maybe
Mhm.
that is one of the great takeaways in the past 15, 20 years.
Absolutely. And I think what you say is so true that because entrepreneurs, you got to be passionate about it or you're not going to do it. It's so tied to what you love and what you're gifted at that that's not taught. It's just, I really think there's a personality for entrepreneurs to keep going when it's tough. And you said self-awareness, self-growth. It's the best self-growth program you could ever have is being an entrepreneur. And a lot of people, Mike, don't want to face their reality. They don't want to have self-awareness and they don't want to and you got to take some risks. You got to be willing to fall down and get back up and try something new and experiment. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs failed as fast as they could so they could get on to the next thing. You know what I mean? I listened to the Diary of a CEO with Stephen, yeah, Bartlett, and that's one of the things he said that's made him successful. He's like, I'm failing as fast as I can because I got to move past that. That thing that's not working. I can't keep it for a year. I got to experiment, move on. Experiment didn't work, move on. And I don't think that we're just not kind of raised in that culture of fail, fail fast.
Yeah,
That's
school
not
teaches you failing is bad. In my opinion,
right.
entrepreneurship, failing is a part of the game, and it's just
Yes,
how you respond to failure. And I realized that
exactly.
I started four different businesses that were major failures, but they gave me skill sets and
Right.
and new tools every step of the way. Have you ever played the game Chips Challenge? It was an old
No,
video game back in the early 90s. Do you remember this at all?
No.
So it's basically a game where it was like a maze, and you would go through this maze and you would go deep into the maze and get these keys. And then you had to back your way out of the maze and then go other places. And you
Okay.
didn't realize how that key would help you down the road somewhere. You would just know that you had to go get that key. And it was like, oh, well, then you've passed this level and this level. You have to use the key that you actually got in level one. And so it makes me think of entrepreneurship. You have to go
Mhm.
deep into this maze to get something, and you're like, oh, that's a dead end. Oh, well, I did get something, right? I figured out maybe the way to start a business is not X, Y, and Z. Okay, I'm going to use that for the next one. And then
Right.
it gets you to the next level, right? You don't realize how it's going to help you right away. But as time goes on, you're like, oh my God, you know what? Now that I'm here, you know what happened 3 years ago? That one thing is going to get me on stage or get me on
Exactly.
that podcast. And then my life is on a different course.
Exactly. Exactly. So I just think traditional school, college, it's success driven. The grades, right? Get the 4.5, I guess it is now, or whatever that is. Yeah, it's just a whole different system that entrepreneur. I mean, if you were waiting until you got the 4.5 as an entrepreneur, you'd be out of business. Seriously.
Right, right. Yeah, I think perfection is subjective. And in entrepreneurship, the ones who are really successful, they're just not afraid of failing in front of other
Yes.
people. They're not
Right.
afraid of admitting that they failed.
Yes.
And I think that that's such a superpower. And I've always said this, and it sounds like you agree. Entrepreneurship is a personal development journey
Oh my
disguised as a business
gosh.
journey. Plain
It
and
is
simple.
absolutely 100%. Yeah.
And so when you ask people this when it comes to their destination, how scary is it that maybe never in their life somebody came to them and say, "Where are you going in life? What do you want to accomplish?" Like it's almost like they forgot about that. And maybe you're the first person to kind of shine it in their face like, "Hey, hey, wait, wait, wait. Why are you taking that job? What are you doing with your money? You mean you don't know where you're going? You don't have a plan?" So
Right.
it's scary that most people don't have an answer. Am I right?
Do you know? Oh my gosh. I work with couples too, Mike, and it's fascinating and really magical because are couples that have been together 10, 15, 20 years. And when we have the conversation of the big dream, which is we do it first, they're like, I never knew that you even had a dream. I never knew that that was your dream. So, people don't, it's a conversation most people don't talk about, but when they engage in it, like light bulbs go off, things, it creates an opening where people can really create and to just think, way beyond what they've ever thought. So it's not usual. No, people usually start with, can you give me the action steps? I'm like, where are you even headed?
Right? No target. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are at anything. If there's no target, how the
Right.
hell are you going to know what to do to if you're or even when you're in a state of fog or when you're missing the mark? You don't know.
Exactly. And my next second step is where am I starting from? It's based on a GPS. So many people don't want to face their financial reality, Mike. But how can you create a plan? You can't even take actions if you don't have a dream and a destination. And if you're not taking stock of where you're at.
Oh, it could be very painful
Well, you're all
to
over the place.
it could be painful to start to put together your first balance sheet. Am I right? Or your profit and loss statement where
Yeah,
you're able to
profit and
say,
loss statement, most people do first. Yeah.
and maybe you can highlight why it's so painful, but in my opinion, the reason why is because when you start to look at your numbers, you might realize there's so much you need to do. There's so much required of you to make these changes, or things are worse than you thought, right?
Yep.
And maybe you're in more debt than you ever realized, or maybe, oh my God, if I stay on this path even another year, um, it's going to be really bad. And to admit that you've made the mistakes in the past and maybe you've been lied to and you agreed to something and you believed in a certain way of looking at money and it didn't get you anywhere. That's a tough realization. So, is that what you've noticed?
Oh my gosh, Mike, in so many levels. So for the money and the mindset, on the money side, it can go both ways. It can be where they don't realize it's not as bad as I thought, especially when it comes to debt, right?
Wow.
Because they're just not facing it. So sometimes people are like, oh, okay. And then a lot of times it is an eye opener when they're personal and business, they don't have a clue what they've been doing or spending money on. And it's a
Mm,
reality check for that. On the income side, see, people focus a lot on revenue or sales. Yes, somebody, how much money you make last year? Oh, I made, $100,000. No, that's your sales number, right? That's the
right.
money you brought in. What did you spend? But see, they're not focused on that. They're just focusing on the money that they're bringing in and then spending and not realizing, let me look at what the spending is and can I get rid of, what's my margins and what makes sense? And do I need to bring in more money or do I need to spend less money? So it's a reality check from that perspective. And then, like you said, it's a mindset check because then they start feeling guilty. Like, oh my
Mm.
God, I can't believe I did that for so many years. I wasted so much time. I wasted so much money. Oh my gosh, now I'm afraid I'll never make it. So it's both sides. It's the money that then triggers all of the feelings and the emotions about what did or didn't happen.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, it makes me think of whenever I first started becoming honest with myself of what I needed to do and how bad it really was. And like you said, the moment you have this clarity, you can have decisiveness. I remember looking at my statement, I was $300,000 in personal debt, and I think I had 10 credit cards. And I looked at the 10 credit cards or 10 bills every month, and I said, you know what? I feel like I'm in a street fight, and I'm going to pick the smallest person, the one I know I can take out without any problem. Maybe there's only a balance of $1,000 on that, but I'm going to take them out. And it was scary to put that plan together. But then when I started knocking them down, knocking them out of my life, I felt like I was winning. And I'm assuming maybe
Yes,
that's a plan you help people put together is,
I
hey,
do. I've
it's
done
it's
that
painful
many
for a
times.
day. It's painful for a day, but my God, 3 months from now, you'll feel like a damn superhero. So what
Oh
do you
my
recommend?
gosh, so true, Mike. The first step, which is to put together just the list of who I owe, people will avoid it forever. They just, right? They're like, I don't want to know, I don't want to know. But in the meantime, you're like, no, you're not really making the right moves. And I do kind of some hybrid things because it really is. And one of the things I really, I'm a proponent of is that this is not a cookie cutter process. So it really depends on the person. And if for you, it's going to make a huge difference if you get rid of the smallest thing first, great. For some people, when they see the 25, 26, 27% credit card interest, we got to deal with that and the small, we got to do a little bit of a hybrid because we've got to start working on both sides of it. But they see progress. And when
Yes.
they begin to see progress, it builds momentum. And you're actually, procrastination and being stuck is based in fear, number one, but the antidote to that is action. And when you take the action, there's something that happens, Mike, that shifts that fear and that procrastination and creates hope. The first stage is hope, and then like, oh, I can actually do this. Confidence. So information gives you clarity, that gives you competence, that gives you confidence, and gives you success. So that's kind of the step in using people to face the reality, because when they don't, they're staying in all the negative emotions. So it really makes a difference.
Now, what's your recommendation when it comes to side jobs or side hustles or just extra revenue streams?
Mhm.
When I look at my 2020 experience, I had a business, still have the same business, but I've expanded rapidly because I looked at that one revenue stream that I was relying on that I had everything going great. But as soon as COVID hit and things started to shut down, I realized, man, one revenue stream, no matter how good this business is, it's such a weakness. So I need to implement many revenue streams.
Right.
And that changed everything, right? And I think I was in control of my destiny to a point with having the business, but only one revenue stream is an absolutely devastating way to
Right.
go, especially if something like that happens. So I think one of the ways to take advantage of all the opportunities around you is, all right, you might have a good career. Maybe your money philosophy is off, but by being around the right people, reading the right books, that's what you're already ahead of the game. You're going to start to learn the right things. But in order for you to really get ahead, start thinking like an entrepreneur and find new revenue streams, whether they're
Absolutely.
passive or earned. And so that has to be a part of the game plan somewhere. What do you recommend for those people out there?
Yeah, because you've got to, because you've got a limited time. So you've got to have some passive things working for you. The key though is to have your first stream as a baseline income. Because if you start fractioning yourself, this one's sort of up and running, and then I'm going to get another one and sort of up and running, and I got another. So then you're starting to fracture yourself. So if you can have something at least 75%, like this is good to go, then you can start another, because you know the effort it takes to get one going will distract you from that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Then you just get to, I've seen entrepreneurs doing like six things and they're not doing six things well. So getting things up and going and then moving to the next one is a great model to use.
Do you recommend, are you a Dave Ramsey fan? Or are you a Robert Kiyosaki fan? Like, do you recommend getting out of debt as fast as possible and then start to build your portfolio and your wealth? Or do you kind of do a hybrid?
I
What's your
do a
recommendation?
hybrid. I do a hybrid because I've seen people that have done those, especially the Dave Ramsey program, and um, they don't get as far as fast.
Yep, I agree.
And Dave Ramsey and it's great. He's gotten a lot of people out of debt, and that's kind of a that the big push, especially if you have a lot of debt. But I don't believe in one of my chapters in my book is no more money diets, because I don't believe in restriction. I believe in creating a conscious spending plan, Mike, so that you have choice. But if the definition of a budget is to make an estimate. Why? Who told you it was to restrict yourself? Because it's like a diet. When you restrict, there's a backlash, and then you're going to just I got to take the vacation, then you're going to overspend. So I do more of a holistic, I'm a holistic financial coach, so we got to look at everything. And if one of your goals is that you want to create wealth through investing, you can start in a small way and still pay off debt if you have the funds and if you've got the income. So it's looking at it from more of a holistic perspective, depending on what you want to do. And if you want to just knock the debt out, yeah, we can do that. But I like people to look at, what is the big dream? Where am I headed? Where am I, starting from? What makes sense to do? And can we do some things at the same time and do a hybrid, instead of just, you got to get the emergency fund does not have to be $1,000. You can start with 10. Why can't you start today? I'm going to
Damn
pay
right.
some debt off, but I'm going to start the fund. And in 5-10 weeks, I'm going to have 500. You know what I mean? But people go, well, I don't have 1,000, so I can't even start. You know what I mean? So it's sometimes we've got to really take a look at what you're trying to do and what makes sense for you.
Damn
So
right.
that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, and I think that you made me think of something. It's basically it's the little bite-sized chunks that you could do today.
Yep.
And you might think, well, it's not that much, so I'm going to hold off until it is. But now that I've been an entrepreneur for, I guess you could say what, so almost, I mean, so 2008 is whenever I first got
Yeah.
into the entrepreneur game. But I the this journey has showed me that it's not all about these big moves. It's little
No,
moves that just
exactly.
snowball. So if you could put $100 towards something and you could do that consistently, the phrase that I live by is it's not what you could do today and it's not what you could do tomorrow. It's what can you do today, tomorrow, and every day for the next 5 to 10 years.
Exactly.
Whatever you can stay consistent to, you can make move, right? You can do some real
Exactly.
damage. And so it might be like you said, what if you pay off your credit card and you could only do $100 a month? Hey, if you do that, but also you're investing in some type of business that might
Right.
produce $100 a month, you use time to your advantage. And all of a sudden,
Exactly.
5 years from now, you are in a whole different place because you stayed consistent. Am I right? Is that the game plan?
Absolute. I always say that consistency, get started and stay consistent. And then you couple that, Mike, with all of the unconscious spending that we do have, whether it's some subscription you signed up for and you don't even care about it anymore, and it's $10 a month or 15 or $20 a month, you start looking at that piece of it too, and then you can start making, some progress. It's
So
not
what's
impossible.
your chapter? I want to get to it before we run out of time, but what stops people? Is it the fact that they have not mastered the art of delayed gratification? Is it distractions? Is it devastating moments in their life that you've noticed when it comes to divorces or losing a job? What stops people usually?
Uh, I have a three-pillar thing that says awareness, information, and support. So awareness is the mindset piece. So it's all of the emotional stuff. Yes, they get derailed by something that happens or something that doesn't happen. So that's the whole mindset piece. The information piece, they just don't know. They have no clue of some of these concepts and things that we're talking about. And then the support piece. People are afraid to tell people what's going on. They're afraid to ask for support. They're afraid to talk to their family, their spouse, their friends about what's going on and ask for, and or to talk to a coach. So many people don't even want to tell me what's going on. They're so ashamed or afraid or whatever. So, people get stuck and stopped for those reasons. It's their emotions, it's their, thinking and their information. And because they don't want to, there's so much shame and guilt about what's going on, they don't want to tell anybody.
Wow. The guilt. Yeah. Isn't that crazy how,
Mm.
fear of what other people will think, is just, it just keeps people stuck. It freezes them.
Totally, totally. And I work with people on, their emotional brain, and fight, flight, freeze, and fold are the force. You get triggered and that's where you're going. And then you're going to get stuck. And the other thing that doesn't help right now, Mike, is the online, presence, is because people say they're doing well and it might not even be true. So people are judging themselves. The shame and guilt comes in like, oh my gosh, I can't admit that this happened because look at all these other people that are doing great. And they're not,
I
or
know.
they
Yep.
might not be, but the story out there looks good. So people are comparing themselves to something that's not even real, and then not wanting to admit that they're struggling.
Damn right. Yeah, and I think that creates that shiny object syndrome, right? Where, oh
Yes.
my God, I'm doing something really well and it's working, but that person seems like they're doing way more than me. So I'm gonna start to do that. And all of a sudden they get off their game, right? Stay in your
Right.
lane, in my opinion, because if you know where you're going, you could see everybody else around you. But if you're locked in and you know what you want to accomplish and how you want to be remembered, all that other shit will just start to fade away. And that's going to give you such a
Exactly.
superpower and I guess a feeling of super clarity. And
Yes.
individuals will see that and want to team up with you, want to work with you, want to do business with you, because they see somebody who's locked in. And I don't care where you come from. If you see someone who knows where they're going, it's encouraging and and everybody
Absolutely.
admires that.
Exactly. Being authentic. I tell people, be, a population of one. Why are you looking at what, there's several people that I follow that say that, why I don't care what they're doing. What does that have to do with me? My gifts, talents, skills, passion, my why, all the stuff that makes me me. Why am I looking for other people to determine that?
Yeah. And
But
I want
we're socialized that way. It's just part, you got to get to that point.
Oh, you share my sentiment on you have to love what you do. I've been in rooms with people who say, "Oh, you don't need to love your business because you just need to figure out what the world needs and offer it to them." In my opinion, I think you have to love it. And the reason why ties in with something that Steve Jobs said, you have to love this game because it becomes so hard and so difficult that if you are sane, most people are sane, they will give up when it gets hard. But if you
Yeah.
love it, you can always count on that to get you through the fires and you're able to slay the dragons that way.
That's
So
exactly
I
right.
believe you have to love it. What do you say about loving what you do? And I think it keeps you
Oh,
young.
yeah.
So tell me about that.
Absolutely. It's that passion, because, all right, I worked with a lot of people that have a lot of money, Mike, and they're not happy,
I know. I know. I've seen it.
right? You've seen it. So I think that passion is what brings the joy, and it just fuels you when you are like, when I'm working with a client and they have a breakthrough and aha, I'm like energized forever. And when I come on podcasts and I talk about what I do and I'm committed to making a difference in the lives of others, I'm like energized. And that's kind of for me how I know it's the thing for me. If you are dragging, like, oh my God, I have to do that now, you know, that just to me just isn't it. And I think that translates to the energy and to people being attracted to you and all of that. People are attracted to the energy of that passion and that positivity. It's infectious.
Yeah, just imagine if you hate what you do. Who's going to want to follow you into battle? Who's going to want to work with you, right? I think that if you have that energy throughout your day and maybe it's not every day, but for the most part, you do. People see that and say, that person's having fun with their life. And you know what? If I get to choose my next pathway in life, I want to be around people who love what they do. And so I think whether it's your client or a team member, individuals instinctively are going to be drawn to you. So huge point there.
Exactly.
And you're not thinking of the short term, right? People who hate what they do are always looking for the shortcuts. How can I do this to get to here because I hate what I'm doing? People who
Or
love it,
when can I leave?
right? People who love it are able to say, you know what, I'm in this for the long haul, and I'm going to do
Yeah,
things the right way and build this business, on solid ground rather than sand.
exactly. Exactly.
So I want to read off your bio. It's phenomenal. Estelle Gibson, CPA, TED speaker, and ICF certified coach, helps women, couples, and entrepreneurs break free from financial dependency and overwhelm. She empowers her clients to move past fear, confusion, and self-sabotage with money and teaches them powerful money strategies so they can create the life and business of their dreams. I
Yes.
love that phrase. In her professional career as a CPA, Estelle has worked with individuals and companies ranging in size from small privately owned businesses to Fortune 500 companies in various industries. And the website that I see here is estellegibson.com.
That's right.
And you can go there. Is there any other social media channel that you're quite active that people can reach out to you directly?
Yep. On Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn.
Okay, so it's easy to find Estelle Gibson, and that's Estelle.
Correct.
Beautiful. So, guys, pick up her book. Phenomenal person. I want to stay in touch with you, Estelle. You share my
Oh,
sentiment on many things in life. So, thank you so much for being on this podcast today. I really appreciate it.
thanks so much for having me, Mike.
Guys, check out her book, Poor by Choice, and the other one, I love the phrase of this too. Rewrite your money story. And
Yes.
remember, guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.